Right, so we're going to talk about that with pain. If we are willing to go through the pain, we're going to grow through the pain. I don't know about y'all, but I have never learned much in my life uh, when things were easy. I learned through the pain. A lot of times I've learned what to continue to do and what not to do. But I just want to share with you a minute how quickly self-pity can come in. You know, I have, when I did my training to be an addiction counselor, today they call us specialists because I've been in it 1,000 years, but anyway, when I was being trained for addiction therapists, counselors, it's a little different protocol. And what they shared with us is to share with your clients. If you're in recovery, share with your clients at the level that you feel comfortable, the level that you have worked through. Do not try to share something that you haven't worked through, because it would be like trying to tell somebody how to get back from New York City if you've never been there. So don't share anything that you haven't experienced yourself. And so those of you that have ever sat in any of my groups or have been through shades at all, you know, I pretty much self-disclose. It's like I'm an open book. There is nothing under the sun, I don't think, that I haven't shared. And everything that I have shared, it took me a while to do it, and I had to work through it first. So it's just been an interesting morning. And how quickly self-pity can come up. So y'all know I've been having some medical challenges, and so a month ago I had this procedure done, and it lasted 12 days. And so I waited a while, and I had another one done. This morning was the 12th day, and I checked my heart rate, and that procedure is no longer working. So now I get to go do another procedure, and immediately I got into, bless my heart, I mean, I'm taking, and I told my daughter this, I am taking good care of myself, I'm eating right, I'm exercising, blah, blah, blah. And like that, I got into feeling sorry for myself. And then like that, I realized that I was feeling sorry for myself. So I had to switch my thinking, because I know the truth. I know the truth that what I have, if treated, is not life-threatening. And we are treating it. I've got 3 wonderful doctors, and I'll go see one of them after a while. And so anyway, I just wanted to say I am just like y'all. We're no different. And something can happen, and like that, I can, well, bless my heart, it's just happening to me. And then I was getting dressed. And I've shared this a lot. I don't share it all the time, but you know, I grew up with a mother that was absolutely addicted to trying to kill herself. Her father was addicted to attempting to kill himself. He lived to be 92, she lived to be 87, but they didn't do much living. They did a lot of threatening to kill themselves, attempting to kill themselves, and I picked that up. That is, you know, we pick up our parents' behavior, their feelings, and we carry them. And I've had that from age 8 and had 9 serious suicide attempts. Now, this morning, I got a text from a beloved friend of mine. She was congratulating me on my last suicide attempt. So today is a celebration for me, because this is the celebration or the day of my last suicide attempt. And it was the most serious. The doctor said that there is something more powerful than we are, because we do not know how she lived through that. So I'm just sharing that with you, how and what brought on that at that time, that particular attempt, was a lot of self-pity and a lot of fear. A lot of fear and a lot of self-pity. Fear of, oh my God, what am I going to do about this situation? And then self-pity, bless my heart, there's no one to help me. That's why I wanted to, all of this just came up this morning. I had forgotten that it was my anniversary of my last suicide attempt. I used to celebrate it just myself. I didn't celebrate it with other people. And at the time, only my son and youngest daughter were in town. I think the two oldest daughters went maybe several years or years without even knowing about my last suicide attempt. But nevertheless, I have never shied away from telling about it, sharing it. I remember right after that, it wasn't long, several months, I was speaking at Texas Tech, and it was still fresh. It was still fresh, and I was still recovering mentally and emotionally and spiritually from that attempt. But I believe God led me to share. It was a big, huge group of students there at Tech going to school to learn how to be counselors. And I shared that, and it was way less than a year, just been several months. And I shared that suicide attempt and how serious it was, and how I got, how you hear people talk about if they have a near-death experience, they see the light. I saw the light, and I wanted to keep going toward it. And I heard a voice that said, your work's not finished, you're not done. And that is literally what brought me back to reality. And the doctors, anyway, I've already told you that. So I kind of hesitated at first to share that since it was so fresh with those students at Texas Tech, but I just felt led to. Later, a girl came up. In that large group, there was a girl that came up to me and asked if she could speak to me outside. I went outside and spoke with her, and she was crying, and she said, I had planned to go home after school and kill myself. She was going to kill herself over her grades and over her folks putting so much money into her education. That's why I'm an open book. And if my story can help one person, it's worth telling it, So I wanted to share that, how strong self-pity can be. And self-pity, particularly for addicts, and everyone on this screen that I see is recovering from some form of addiction. And that makes us, and I'm not saying this in a haughty way or anything, and not at all. I'm saying it with a lot of humility. Those of us who qualify for a 12-step program, we are blessed beyond measure because we have a planned step by step by step by step how to get rid of character defects. Self-pity is a character defect. And what it does for addicts, and for most people, and normies, whatever a normie is, they could feel sorry for themselves all they want to and be miserable. But for an addict, we get into that, well, bless my heart, poor me, pour me another drink, pour me another milkshake. When that brain kicks into self-pity, the next thought, our brains are powerful, it'll tell us, I know how you can feel better. That's why in the program, we hear, shy away or work on self-pity, more than anything, because it's deadly for addicts. If we ever get into that part of feeling sorry for ourselves and stay there, and that, and by the grace of God, I hope you all have sponsors, because when that thought returns, you pick up a phone and you just tell that sponsor all about, how bad, awful, and wrong your life is, and you're feeling sorry for yourself, and they will listen to you. And they'll listen to you. And then they'll probably take you back to the book. They'll give you a page to read, or they'll just say, go do so-and-so, and what they'll do is, for alcoholics, and say, go check on this drunk at the hospital. They'll get you into action. They'll get you out of yourself and into recovery. So we are blessed beyond measure that we're addicts. because we have a way to live life that I don't know how those normies do it out there. But anyway. All right, so the truth about self-pity is that it is a form, it takes the form of addiction because we get something out of it. It's like a drug. When we feel sorry for ourselves and we get to stay in that for very long, and there are people, my mother, that was her main feeling, was self-pity. She passed that on to me. And I lived my life feeling sorry for myself until I found the program. And I will tell you, this last suicide attempt, and I'm not proud of it, it happened decades ago, but I was in recovery. And that's why we must talk about these things that come up in our brains. We're not insane, but the insanity is keeping it to ourselves. So, self-pity, when you really get into self-pity, that was the only real feeling that I knew. It becomes like an addiction, and the more you do it, the more you just began to rely on it. Self-pity, it's like a drug, and when you get into this hamster wheel, this craziness of self-pity, you don't even know that you're playing the game of self-pity. You know that you're into it because after a while it becomes a way of life. Now the people around you do, but self-pity will also make sure that you see and hear and take in the worst case scenario of any situation that you have. It is a negative. There's nothing positive about self-pity. And what it will do is, I will tell you this, suicide rates are up higher than they've ever been since the pandemic. Addictions rate, we've got some addiction therapists on here. The rate of addiction is higher than it's ever been. And I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt, at the core of that, started with self-pity. Bless my heart. And it was powerful. It was probably started with pain and fear. And if it kept on, it became self-pity. Because, we came out of 2 really bad years. And, this year is not the best in the world. But it's different than during the pandemic. So we've seen a lot of this. And then how people have turned to substance. And I will tell you, this is my belief, and I think it's been proven over and over. I don't think you can make an addict out of a non-addict. I think this is about brain chemistry. And, an addict can go all of their life and no addiction can be activated until you activate it with a substance, regardless of what the substance is. So addicts, I believe, are more prone to self-pity. And what it does, it makes you really look at the most negative thing in your life and the fear of predicting, how bad it's going to be. It's not going to ever get any better. And that is that poor me, and what we get out of it, we begin to sit on that pity pot, and the only thing we get out of sitting on the pity pot is a red ring around our butts. Mm-hmm. That's all we get, is, to sit there, bless my heart. We get no payoff for it. And what we think about, this is the dangerous part, what we think about comes about. When you put negative energy over and over and over and over out into the universe, guess what? The universe brings it back to you. You get what you ask for. And I believe that beyond any shadow of a doubt. And the flip to that, you put out positive vibes, you put out positivity, that's what you're going to get back. Now, we live in a little town of a little over 400 people. And there was a little situation on Facebook about our little town, about a wonderful woman. In fact, she's sitting right here on my couch this morning. She's here visiting. And she wants to find a little house in Buffalo Gap. And her friend Misty went on Facebook to see if anyone had a house for sale, and that she was moving from California. you know, what people started criticizing her moving. Well, she needs you to stay in California. She doesn't need to bring that stuff here. Let her move to New Mexico, anywhere but Buffalo Gap. And so, in my brilliance, I got on there and I said, and I usually don't respond to anything negative, but I just couldn't help myself. And I told them, I said, you know, there are at least 400 wonderful, wonderful people in this little village. And we have some really, really sick old soreheads. And that's who you're hearing from, are the soreheads. Do not pay any attention to them. They're negative about everything in our community. Believe the other 400. So anyway, I got out of my box. I don't usually do negative things like that, but I just couldn't help myself. Okay, so if you stay in the state of self-pity, you will struggle with your health, everything. I mean, we began to internalize our feelings. And this is where, you know, a normie, it can affect anyone, and how it affects a normal person that's not an addict is health-wise. We internalize that negativity, and it will break down the body. The body is not designed to carry all of that negativity. And so we break down in stress-related illnesses. It harms our relationships and our finances. And I want to particularly if you get stuck in self-pity and in negativity. So what will happen is people, when you are stuck in self-pity, it's like carrying around a whole big old bag of rocks. You carry it with you everywhere, and people began to see you as pathetic, a pathetic human being. And research has shown that self-pity is a method, now listen to this, it is a method of getting attention. Now, some people crave attention, whether it's negative or positive. It just says, look at me, and self-pity creates what they're looking for. And I did it when I was in that cycle before I ever found recovery. I wanted people to feel sorry for me, and I wanted them to listen to me. And after a while, people get tired of hanging out with you. If that's all you do, stay in the negative, you know, they will begin to shy away from you. And they will begin to ignore you. Oh, here she comes. I wonder what's wrong with her today, you know. So what happens then, it's kind of like crying wolf. When you stay in self-pity and, you know, bless my heart, then when you really do have a problem, you don't have anybody to listen to you. They just think it's one more thing that you're feeling sorry for yourself about, and they'll walk away. They won't listen to you. Okay, and so they just won't take you serious is the fact. So number 3 is every validation that you hear or you dream up about the sorry state of your affairs or about the self-pity takes you back down that rabbit hole every time. When you start thinking about how people have done you wrong, your boss, he hadn't promoted you or she hadn't promoted you, you know, your spouse is not good to you, blah, 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 blah. It validates your negativity and it validates you going back down to in that rabbit hole. And so when someone confirms your misery, like they give you sympathy, it makes you feel better. See, I mean, I really am in a bad place. And what it does, it makes you become more of a victim. But after a while, people get to know you and they won't do this. They will stop giving you the sympathy that you crave. And if, you know, sympathy for addicts particularly give us absolutely zero good, zero. And I don't know if you can say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you want to know where to find sympathy, you go to the dictionary and you're going to find it between shit and syphilis, and it'll do you about as much good. Go to the dictionary and look at it. Sympathy. Now, unless, you've had a death, you've had something tragic, absolutely. People need to surround you and sympathize with you. But when you require people to give you sympathy, you're stuck there in that dictionary between those two things. And sympathy is worse. Don't feed for people who live around people with self-pity. Don't feed it. Okay, so for your reality, when you're in a state of self-pity, your reality is distorted. You can't see the truth from the false. So this is where, when you live in a state of self-pity, you also see the world through different lens. You see the world as negative, and they are all out to get you. They get up every morning to get you, your boss, your spouse, whatever. You see the world through negative eyes. And guess what? That's what you'll draw to you. And so another thing is number 5. Guess what? By this time, you're feeling very depressed. When you live in a state of self-pity, it's a lonely place to be. It's really, because we teach people how to treat us. And if you work somewhere that you go in every day, down and out and feeling sorry for yourself and all, they will start staying clear of you. Healthy people, sickness seeks its own level. Health seeks its own level. The only people that's going to really surround you after a while are going to be people that are sick as you are, and they want you to return, they feel sorry for themselves, and then they'll feel sorry for you. So you get into that feeling depressed. And what that does is you take your life and everything around you so seriously. You take it so serious. And it gets so overwhelming that, that dark cloud is over your head all of the time. You can just see people almost. I'm a visual person, and when you know somebody that just stays in that bless my heart stage of self-pity, it's almost like there's a black cloud falling over it. And you don't want to be around them, or most people don't. And so depression drains you. And this is the time, it'd be great if a person has already sought help, but they usually don't seek help until the pain gets really bad. Depression brings on pain. And hopefully that will be a time that they will begin to go see a counselor, and they usually present for depression. They don't say about the self-pity, but a good therapist is going to weed through and get to the core of it. And if you're an addict, if you go, and I say this all the time, because I don't care, I'm almost 80 years old, and people can think whatever they want to think about me. But anyway, if you go to a therapist, and you report that you use alcohol or drugs, but I just use drugs, recreationally, or if you report having any food issues and they don't refer you to a 12-step program, you need to get up and leave that office and sue them for malpractice, because what they're saying is, I know best. And you come back next week, maybe you need to have 3 appointments next week. And don't forget to leave the check at the desk. And I will tell you, there's some wonderful therapists out there. And majority of our clients come here through referrals from healthy therapists who understand addictions. But when they don't, they will hold on to you until hell freezes over, because it's a money deal. Now, I will tell you, any client that we get here that is referred by a therapist, that therapist is a part of our treatment team. We keep them up on everything. We even have them call them sometime during their stay here, and we refer them right back. That's how you can really help people, is have you got to surround an addict with a village, a healthy village, because it takes a lot to help some of us. So I'm not criticizing therapists. I'm only criticizing those who don't refer to a 12-step program when their client reports an addiction. And if they don't do that, and you know you have an addiction, of course your brain will be thrilled that they didn't, and you'll, But anyway, you might check out and get, before you ever go to a therapist, and ask how they believe in the 12 steps. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of them out there today that do not believe in the 12-step process, but I'm waiting for them to come up with a better method of treating addicts. Show me what you're using that is better than the 12 steps. No one has proven it yet, ever, and I keep waiting. Okay, I'm off on my tangent. So 7, guess what? You are unattractive to others. When you're in self-pity, self-pity is ugly, and you look ugly, and you don't, usually by this stage, you don't keep yourself, and your hair is a mess, don't, anyway. So people get to where they don't want to be around you at all, because there's no room when a person is all wrapped up in their self. Well, first thing, they make a poor package. When we're all wrapped up in ourselves, we make a poor package. And when we are all wrapped up into self-pity, there's no room for relationship or friendship, and it becomes all about you, or when we're in it, us. It becomes all about the person that is full of self-pity. Self-pity is the ultimate of self-centeredness. Go to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Self-centeredness, and what self-centered, self-pity, what self-pity comes from, the big book will tell you. It starts with a resentment. And all resentment means is, RE as a prefix means to repeat, and SENT means, it's a Greek word came from a Greek word, centeri, that means to feel. And all a resentment is you refill, and replay in your head something that somebody did you wrong about. That's a resentment. That's a dangerous place for any addict to go. And then, if you're a rager like I was, then you get that resentment going, and then you'll go blow up at the person that you're mad at. Have you ever do that?
Yeah.
And then you pull back, and you have so much shame and embarrassment about that. I've ruined a lot of good friendships years ago in that. Or checkers at grocery stores, you name them. I wasn't particular who I raged at. And I know now it wasn't them, it was all that I was carrying around. And so what happens when you, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
About resentments.
Okay, resentments. So you resent that person, then you blow up at them, and then you pull off, and you feel bad about yourself, and you get mad at yourself. So not only do you have a resentment, then you have a self-resentment. You're mad at yourself. Any of y'all ever done that? And then you get to thinking about it. Well, they did me more harm than I did them. And then you move to self-pity. Yeah. This is a process. And when you get to self-pity, that is dangerous for an addict, because the next thing is to use, or to get on that phone and call a sponsor, get up, go to a meeting, help someone else, do something to get yourself out of that self-pity moment. Okay, and so self-pity, like I said, is the ultimate of self-centeredness, and when we're there, there's no room for anyone else. Even our children and our spouses are so affected by it. So the next thing is you feel like you have no potential, because what happened, if you ever had any dreams or ambition in your life, self-pity will steal it from you. Because you'll get to thinking, well, I'm never going to be as good as them. I don't look as good. I don't do this as good. And guess what? All of your potential goes out the window. I get a little fearful when I hear people talk about potential, particularly parents talking about their kids' potential. You're putting a problem on them that is not years to put on them. So anyway, that's another for another time. I'll talk about that later. But anyway, when you view yourself as negative, the world's going to accommodate you. The world will accommodate you, and who would want to be around us when we're all wrapped up in ourselves and self-pity? And so, the number 9 is you have no fun in your life. You can't find anything funny. There's no fun. The fun has gone out the window. And guess what? Life was meant to have fun and to enjoy life. Yeah, we do have to suit up and show up and go to work and take care of our kids or whatever we do, but even that can be fun. You can find fun and humor in just about any situation. My friend Misty, we spend every Tuesday together, nearly every Tuesday. We have for many years. And then her friend from California is here, and so she went with us yesterday, and we decided to do a little road trip. Well, I'll tell you, they cranked up I like to sit in the back seat. I've never liked to sit in the front seat unless I'm driving. You can't drive from the back seat. Well, I can.
But she
does. I do. I tell them how to drive. But anyway, they cranked up that music, and we listened to that music, and they're both, they are singers. And they were singing along, we were hooping and hollering and having fun. That's what life is. I'm almost 80 years old. I'm half these young women's ages, and they hang out with me. Which I do not hang out at senior citizens. I don't. I'm sorry. I do not. I'm not old enough for senior citizens yet. So anyway, by all means, have fun. And the most important thing is learn to laugh at yourself. We are funny creatures. Laugh at yourself. When you've made a mistake, laugh, see it. And if it's something you can correct it immediately. And then find something humorous. They say in Alcoholics Anonymous, Rule 63 is don't take yourself so serious. Lighten up and enjoy the moment. And when you're full of self-pity, you can't enjoy the moment, any moment. And so number 10, I've got to get to the solution. You've become a part of the living dead. You're walking around still breathing in and out, but your spirit is dead. It's dead. And what happens is you're really not living. There's no life there. There's no fun, there's no excitement, and you stay in a state of despair and worry. You know what worry is? And I know anxiety is real. I work the mental health field. I know anxiety is a mental health diagnosis. And it's very treatable, but guess what? The person who has anxiety, they hold the key to their recovery, just like addicts do. We hold the key out of our actions. You can go to a doctor, you get on good meds if you need them, and that will help the anxiety. But that's a small part of it. The rest of it is up to you. And what anxiety is fear of the future. Wow. And, oh my God, what's going to happen if I don't get that job, or if I can't do this, or if the check doesn't come in the mail, how can I pay? And so we live in the future instead of in the present. And what that is no life at all. We project into the future. And so recovery is about when those thoughts come up, stop yourself and bring yourself back to the moment. Okay, I want to briefly go through that there is help and ways to overcome self-pity, but you must first recognize that you have it. And if you doubt if you have it, be brave. Ask people around you that really love you if they think that you have self-pity, and if they're honest, they'll probably tell you, So let's look at this. And I keep saying, those of us in recovery, oh my Lord, aren't we fortunate? Are you blessed beyond measure? Because we have a planned program of action that can take us from the problem to the resolution if we're willing to follow 12 simple steps. After you work the steps the first time, they become a working part of the mind and body. And if you have another addiction, you get to do those 12 steps with another addiction and another. But what happens after a while, in order to stay in good, sound mind, emotion, and sobriety, it's not just being, not using a substance. Sobriety is about emotional sobriety, mental sobriety, physical sobriety, learning to take care of your body. And so when you're into self-pity, I don't know, I just get off. And okay, so the first part is that you must recognize that you do have it. If you don't recognize that you have it, you can't treat it. And so you might ask people, if you have anybody left in your life, you might ask them, or maybe those that have stepped away, you might ask them if you have self-pity. But anyway, accept your negative life and have a desire to change. That's all any of us need, is a desire to change. And so the first thing is to do is to recognize that you have a choice. You have a choice. Stop feeling sorry for yourself about the state of your affairs. Stop navel gazing. You know what navel gazing is? Everybody look down at their navel. Everybody look down at your navel. And all you can see is yourself. Mm-hmm. Stop doing that. Stop looking inward all of the time, except for things that you know that you need to change. And I'll tell you, you don't need to do this by yourself. You can't do it by yourself. And there's really a 12-step program that can fit any problem that you might have. So, Codependence Anonymous covers everyone. Al-Anon, I won't go down the list because the list is long. But I'm grateful. I am grateful to qualify for a 12-step program, because once you've done the 12 steps, then you do a good 10th step every day, and it becomes automatic. And when you do a good 10th step, you're doing the first 9 steps over every day, the first 9 steps. If you do a good 10th step, you have a problem. You go to step 1, figure out what the problem is. Step 2 is the solution. Are you willing to turn this problem over to the care of God? That's the problem and the solution. Now you can hold on to it till hell freezes over. But if you want, some recovery, go to step 3. You make a decision which way you want to go. You want to stay in the misery of self-pity and whatever, or do you want to go toward recovery? This is a spiritual process. And next step 4, all step 4 is to go back and look at your character defects. But they've got it set up. Those people were wise who wrote the book. We get to write all of the people that we resent first. When you do the 4th step as it's outlined in the big book, we get to list all of those people. And I went to town and I list people. I had over 80 people, 80 resentments, 80 people on my first 4th step that I resented. They tricked me. And then you had to list all your fears and problems in the sex area and all of that. And we got to see how those people affected us. But guess what? There's another column that you have to look at. And that column is, what part have you played in it? And that's how they tricked me, because I had a part in every one of those resentments. And that's what, created my low self-esteem and my self-pity and all that. Not mine, but self-pity. Okay, and blaming others for the sorry state of our affairs. So 2 is if you want to recover, allow yourself to have the pain without using a substance. And that includes the telephone. The telephone, and I'm going to do this probably next week, media addiction. People are so, I don't care what age, I don't care what group you're in, what conversation is going on. You look around the room, how many of them are on their phones?
That's true.
So next week we're going to talk about the media, because We've got to get clear so we can feel the pain of what is underneath there. And as long as we're medicating it with anything, we're not going to feel the pain. And pain, you know, those things that you feel so sorry for yourself about, there may be some core to that, some real core that created that self-pity. And you get to look at that in step 4, and then you get to see your part of it. And that's what I'm talking about. You get to look at your part, and that's what you get to change if you want to, you know. But you got to have to feel the pain. The pain is our greatest healer. And how you do that, you actually feel it. You feel it. And if you've, and I know everyone on here, just about, I know, and have worked with all of it. And I have seen your pain, that raw pain, and you've left a bunch of it at Shades of Hope. Some of you have come back several times and dumped more here. This is the place where you can get through that pain and grieve it and heal and invite God into the pain, invite God into the center of that pain. And the damage that self-pity has done, I will tell you, self-pity has brought you to recovery. You do not have to stay in it. Get honest with yourself and in your reality, and with either a therapist, a minister, a sponsor. Sponsors are the most beloved people in the world. A good sponsor where you can call and say anything to them. You're not saying it about them. They are a vessel that can hold whatever you are talking about, because they know how to set boundaries and they don't take on your stuff. And so feel the pain, the deep, deep, deep pain, and most of it comes from childhood. Not all, but majority of it does. But let the pain of all of the regrets that you have of the past and the despair, oh, despair, woe is me, let it sink in, let it seep into your very being and feel that pain. That's why I used to do silent retreats. If you have an opportunity to, in a 12-step program, to go to a silent retreat, that means silence. Everybody's silent for usually for 2 days. And guess who you get to have company with? Yourself, and hopefully the God of your understanding. That's what I'm talking about. You're going to have to get honest with yourself. We cannot fully resolve the self-pity until we fully acknowledge it. So, all right, here we go. So, get the desire to control your life. You know, we treat the big C here, we call it codependency. And a lot of people they can want to control everybody's lives, their kids, their employees or employers or people they meet on the street. Control is the problem. So recovery is about get control of your own life, not other people. Don't look outside yourself. Look inside of what you can control. Because when you try to control other people, that's when they really back away from you. And, you know, a good guideline for recovering codependence is learning when to say yes and no. When you're asked to do something, if you can do it and you feel good about it and you won't have any resentment, say, yes, absolutely, I can do that. No strings attached. Codependency recovery gives you the privilege to say no. If they ask you to do something and it's something you don't want to do or that you can't do at that particular time, no is a complete sentence. No, not today, no. And that's what good recovery from codependency. And a lot of people with self-pity and these types of character defects will seek out an untreated codependent to take on their pain. All right, so 6 or 4 or wherever I'm at, you know, Commit to not bragging ever about yourself. Don't brag about yourself, particularly early in recovery. And what I mean by that, we all have our stories. It's important for us to tell our story, but at some point we need to stop telling our stories unless asked or unless it would be beneficial to help someone else. We need to quit telling our story. I had a client years and years and years ago. I used to have a private practice, and she was one of them. And she'd come once a week, and she'd tell the same story. She'd tell it and 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 tell her story. And one day I told her, I said, now next week what I want you to do is I want you to make an appointment for 2 hours. And oh, she was so excited, okay, that I was going to see her for 2 hours. So she came back the next week. She got in there. I said, okay, I want you to start at the very beginning. And I want you to tell your entire story. Don't leave anything out. I want you to tell me your story. Well, she lightened up. She got to telling that story, all the bad, awful, and wrong that was done to her and the stuff she did. And she told it and told it and told it and told her. And then I said, when she got through, she was just smiling. And it's important that we tell our stories. But what this woman had become, she had become her story. And I asked her, I said, would you like to move beyond your story? Well, yeah, that's why I'm here. And I said, would you spend 6 weeks telling your story over and over and over? And I still know her. That's been 30 years ago. And every time I see her, she said, do you want to hear my story? we find humor. I mean, she's found humor in it. If we are not careful, we become our story. We need to work through the pain of it and get past it. Be willing to share your story if it might help someone else, always. Number 5, do something. Do something. Pick out one thing that you're unhappy about in your life and go through a process of changing it. One thing. Don't try to handle everything at one time. Pick out one thing that's not working in your life and find a process to change it. And what it might look like is, looking at your health. It might be looking at your finances. It may look like, relationships come down there at the end. We always want to work on them first. No, don't work on that relationship first unless y'all are beating up on each other. Then you have to address it. You cannot address the relationship early in recovery. You don't have anything to give. So go back up here and pick one thing that you want to change about yourself, that you're unhappy about, and go through the change process. And the main thing is feel the pain. Write about it, journal about it, pray about it, feel it to every fiber of your body. Feel the pain. But the good thing is, what we're going to have to do is change the behavior. With every negative, it takes, and I think it's more than that now because we're hit by negativity more than we ever have. But with every negative thing in our life, it takes at least 6 positives to overcome a negative. Think about that. 6 positives to overcome. And I think it's larger than that. And so it's about replacing the negative with a positive. It doesn't mean to live in, la la land. You're going to have to be, stay awake to know what's going on around you. But when you stay in the middle of self-pity, there's no resolve to anything. Okay, number 6, notice the good things in your life. Y'all know all this, but write a daily gratitude. We forget what to be grateful for. And, and I'm no saint, don't get me wrong, but I wake up of a morning and I start I pray and I go down my list. And while laying in the bed, I'm old, so I just stay in my bed. I used to get on my knees but I stay in my bed. And I pray for the people that are on my list. Sometimes I add all the time I add new people. And then I do a gratitude list. I look around and what I'm grateful for. One thing, I have a super comfortable bed that I've worked at to get it like that. I am so grateful for that bed. I love that bed. And I look around at the pictures of my grandchildren. I'm great. Anyway, you get the idea. Forever, and hear me, I'm not saying I'm this perfect person, but I've been doing these things since the first sponsor that I had told me to do prayer and meditation of a morning. Do you know my youngest child was a baby? She's 54 years old. That's how long I have been doing this. I've never failed to do some form of meditation. And it's usually done before my feet ever hit the floor of a morning. I used to read stacks of books and spend hours in meditation. I don't do that anymore. I do have a prayer partner. I've always had a prayer partner, not always started, well, pretty much, but I have the best in the world now. My Misty girl, we get together, try to get together, and we call it prayer and share. And sometimes we call it prayer, share, and walk. And sometimes we call it prayer, share, and shop, So anyway, put humor in it. But, make a gratitude list and write down things you're grateful for, and affirmations work. You've got to shift that brain. You think so bad of yourself when you're into self-pity. Get that list, make a list of 50 really short affirmations, say them to yourself. If you do that, look in the mirror and say those affirmations to yourself 5 times a day for 2 weeks, your brain's going to make a shift. And people who do that, they make a shift. People who don't. I mean, we know when they don't, because that's an assignment given here. All right, to wind this up, give to others. That's kind of said that. One of the best ways to get out of yourself is to help somebody else. I've got to talk and that's without any expectations, no strings attached. And I'm not bragging, because this young man has done it himself. I've got a grandson, Spencer, that's 20 years old.
He's our favorite.
He had a little weight problem most of his life. Then he played football, and then he got a scholarship to play football. He was asked by the coach 2 years ago. He was already big. He was asked to gain 50 pounds. He was huge, 300 pounds. It was, so he had a back problem, and he can't play football anymore. And he made a decision that he wanted to change his life. No one made it for him, and he started seeking out help. And I have cold chills. Years ago, a friend of mine he wrote a book, gave me a copy of it, signed it, and it's called Fat Boy, Thin Man. And when my grandson was younger, I gave him that book and asked him if he'd like to read it. And he looked at it, no, Minnie, I don't want to read that. The first of the summer, and I'm about to cry, he came over here and he asked me, he said, Minnie, do you still have that book, Fat Boy, Thin Man? And I said, well, let's go look. I went back to what my office says, and we looked. He found it. He took it, was gone most of the day working over at Shades. He came back and he said, do you know this man? I said, oh yeah, we're good friends. He said, would you call him for me? Would you get his number? And I said, well, yeah. So I called him, and he was getting ready to go into the gym. He said, give me his number, or no, you give him my number, and when I get out of the gym, I'll call him. He called him. I don't know anything beyond that, but that young man was willing to make changes. And then I want to tell you, you would not believe him today. He works out, and works out twice today. He's lost all of that weight. He's replaced it with muscle. He's on a food plan that you won't believe. He is wearing his parents out. They have to feed him like a baby every 2 hours, and they're very grateful to do that. You can't believe how he looks. And he's always bit his fingernails up to the quick where they would bleed. He's been reading books. He did this, it's called a 75-day challenge. And he showed it to me. And he's done it with a friend of his, and his friend lives in California. They go to school together, and every day they're accountable to each other. And there's amazing things that young man has done. One of them is do something for someone else without getting found out. That's true 12-step principles. And I mean, I know I'm bragging on it, but we have seen him change this summer. You cannot believe it. And he has started going to church by himself every Sunday, and he's going to youth camp this weekend, and then he has to leave and go back to school. So anyway, I'm saying that to say, if you want to change, you're going to have to get serious about it. It takes hard work. So, alrighty, that's what I have. You can change. It takes time, and it takes to replace every negative with a positive. And I guess that's what I have. Remember, pain turned inward. Pain turned inward turns to self-pity. And the poor me's. The poor me, another drink. So we grow through pain. And how we grow through pain is we grow through the problem. We face the problem and we grow through it and get to the other side. I've kind of preached on this because it has been I had no idea why I chose it last week. But when my dear friend called and reminded me today of, this is the anniversary of my last suicide attempt. That suicide attempt, the deep-seated part of that was low self-esteem and self-pity, and I'm free of that today by the grace of God and the 12 steps, and a lot of people helping me. All right, we're going to take a minute, and then I've got to go. My daughter Kim is having some surgery in a few minutes, and I want to run to the hospital. Does anyone have a comment before we